welcome to the ICT Pulse podcast. I'm Michelle Marius, your host and the editor and publisher of ICT Pulse, the online platform where we discuss ICT issues from a Caribbean perspective. Welcome to another episode in our Know Your Neighbours series. Today, the country we'll be exploring is Saint Kitts and Nevis. Saint Kitts and Nevis, also known as the Federation of Saint Christopher and Nevis, is located in the northern Lesser Antilles to the west of Antigua and Barbuda. Although it has a population of around 55,000, this two-island state is considered to be one of the more progressive in relation to telecoms and ICT. To help us understand that landscape better, we are delighted to have Ervin Williams, the director at the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, which is the telecommunications regulator in Saint Kitts and Nevis. Ervin, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Michelle, and thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, so Ervin, although I gave like a 2-sentence overview of Saint Kitts and Nevis, can you just share a bit more about the country generally in terms of size and economy, etc.?
Size and economy. Well, as you correctly stated, Saint Kitts, our population is approximately around between 55,000 people. That's combined, both Saint Kitts and Nevis, both islands combined. Our tourism industry is mainly responsible for our economic boost and vibrancy that we experience in today. We have invested heavily in our tourism product. You can see that in our high-end hotels and our cruise facilities. As a matter of fact, we are now investing in a second cruise port because we have had one cruise port that has been functioning for some years now, and that cruise port actually can berth the world's biggest cruise ship as we speak. We are now investing in a second one that is being built and should be commissioned this September coming. Our tourism industry is mainly responsible for our economic experiences that we are having today. Our manufacturing sector is an agricultural sector, and our construction sector also play a role in our economic vibrancy that we're experiencing today. So mostly if you come to the island, you'll see a lot of activities as it pertains to the tourism sector. And that's because we are investing heavily in the development of that sector.
Understood. So let's now focus in on telecommunications and ICT. How developed is it in Saint Kitts and Nevis? And can you talk to us about the competition and the accessibility of services as well?
Well, the telecommunications landscape in Saint Kitts and Nevis, if you would look at our ITU indices and you would look at our rankings globally and regionally, and you would realize that Saint Kitts is competing with some developed countries and is outpacing most of its neighbors in the Caribbean and by extension the Americas as far as the telecommunications indices is concerned. And the indices capture several different things, and it's there, the ITU website, for anybody to study. The competition in Saint Kitts and Nevis, we have, as it is now, we have 2 mobile telecommunication companies, and we have 2 internet service providers, and a couple of other small scale, what I call television subscribe services. One is on Nevis and one is on Saint Kitts, and these compete, of course, with the over-the-top telecommunication services that people can buy online, like the Amazon Fire Sticks and so forth. So the telecommunications environment here is one that I would say it's not so much on the cutting edge as yet, because we're still experiencing the LTE services, and our broadband services are some of the best you can find in the OECS and by extension the Caribbean region. So the uptake for the services is, and the uptake and penetration for the services here is quite significant when compared to other islands. as we do not have the problem with pricing per se, as you'll find in some of the other islands. In our island, the prices are, they can be a little lower, but they're somewhat reasonable. So the uptake for these services is high. And as far as accessibility for services is concerned, because of the geographical landscape of both islands, we almost have a 100% coverage and penetration rate for telecommunication services availability. So the availability leads to the access. So the prices themselves are not that high. They can be lower, like I said, but because they're not that high, access to the services, because affordability breeds to access or lends to access. And so the affordability is not that bad. And so the access to those services, as you can see in some of our statistics that are out there on the ECTEL's annual review, annual sector review, our uptake on the services and so forth is very high as well. So the accessibility is there because the affordability lends to that.
Oh, excellent. Now, I guess all of this now is causing me to ask quite a few questions, has brought up quite a few questions for me. Now, since Saint Kitts and Nevis, as you rightfully said, the economy is built on tourism services and to a lesser degree construction, agriculture, which were some of the things that you mentioned. What do you understand might be Saint Kitts and Nevis's longer term vision as it relates to ICT?
Well, that question is a question I think that would be brilliantly answered by the Honourable Minister, but I think I can echo his vision and say that what I understand from the government and from the Minister in particular is that they're trying to create a country and a citizenry where the people will be built on and trained to be more involved in ICT in the ICT sector as far as investment is concerned, academic is concerned, and as far as the government services to the citizens of Saint Kitts and Nevis is concerned. So the future outlook for the Federation of Saint Kitts and Nevis as far as the ICT sector is concerned is going to be one that will be involved from the academic level, because we want to push this throughout the schools, and it has been happening. And then we want to take it up to the social level, where government services will be sent out and will be made available to the average citizenry on an ICT basis. And also, as far as we are concerned, it is showing up a lot. The ICT need is showing up a lot in the tourism sector already, because a lot of these hotels and so forth, you can book them online. There are a lot of downstream services, are what we call local support services, that are now making themselves available using ICT-based tools and solutions. So overall, we find the ICT sector is playing a heavy role in the tourism development right now. The ICT sector is being pushed into the schools and local colleges right now. And the government themselves is looking to develop proper e-government services that will be made available for the citizenry to access government services quicker and easier. As a matter of fact, about a month ago, the Inland Revenue Services Department here, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is the first in the OECS, if I'm not mistaken, to have, where you can now fully register your vehicle online, and you can now fully obtain your driver's license renewal online instead of having to go and wait in long lines. This is now an actual reality in Saint Kitts and Nevis, and if I'm not mistaken, it is the first of its kind in the Caribbean, as I understood.
Okay, well, I guess I'll double check that, but I mean, it is still an achievement notwithstanding. Now, just continuing with probably the thrust by government as it relates to ICT, I noted that last year, St. Kitts was one of the first Caribbean governments to have an autonomous systems number, ASN. Can you give us just a brief overview of what it is and why the government went through all of that trouble to get one?
Well, that one, I would not be in a position to speak to and speak on because that was not done through our offices here. That was something that is spearheaded by directly. As a matter of fact, we did not know of it until you brought it to our attention. That this autonomous system number is something that was directly brought to my attention by you. But this is handled by the ICT department of the government of Saint Kitts and Nevis, because the ICT department here is a fully functioning and active department, and they're the ones who would have been responsible for this ASN. So they would be the ones to directly speak on it. I do not want to pretend that I've known of it or I have understanding of why they did it. So I'll unfortunately have to let that one sit until if I get any information in it, then I'll be glad to share it with you in the future.
Okay, but let me also then ask, because I think in the papers last week it was reported that Saint Kitts will soon have an internet exchange point. Are you aware of that?
Well, the awareness of the IXP, the internet exchange point, dates back to over 10 years now. I think we have had that switch here. Unbelievable. As a matter of fact, I was just in a meeting yesterday and I raised the same concern about the other islands, namely Grenada, Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Martin, and some of our other neighbors, has gone ahead and have had their switches, their IXP switches implemented. And we have had a switch sitting here on the ground that were given to us by, I think, was Packet Clearinghouse some time ago. And Mr. Bevel Wooding, who you should be real familiar with, I think,
yes,
was very instrumental, and I think was somewhat disappointed to know that Saint Kitts didn't fully go and implement this switch. However, as be it as it was, as it is, I'm now reliably informed that there was a committee put together, and so there is action and activity taking place to now move towards having that switch fully functional. So I think that we are moving seriously to having that switch implemented, as opposed to whatever had happened back then that led to the breakdown of the discussions. I think now what I'm understanding is we're now past that, and now we're going full steam ahead and thinking of implementing the switch.
Okay, that's great. Now, many people don't know that St. Kitts is where the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is headquartered. And as you might be aware, quite recently, I think within the last 2 to 3 months, they have launched a digital currency initiative. And I just wanted to get a sense of what might be the sentiment on the ground in St. Kitts and Nevis with respect to having a digital currency, I guess, coming on stream as it relates to public attitudes and perceptions around ICT and leveraging ICT.
Well, I'm not sure what the reactions and the discussions are surrounding that particular subject matter, especially given the fact that we are not privy to a lot of what led to the bank doing what they're doing now. However, I'm sure that there are many others within the government who would have been involved in the bank's directions as to where they're heading as far as cryptocurrency is concerned. What I would say, however, is I've attended several meetings in which discussions and presentations were made on this very subject matter of cryptocurrency and the likes. And there seems to be an appetite for it in the Caribbean. However, while the appetite is there for it in some quarters, what I also get is that by standards and traditions, the approach to it is a very careful one. And so I'm not sure if the bank is doing this as a testing phase or a trial run. I don't know exactly why the bank is doing it. But you're right. I've read and I've heard that the bank has embarked on this exercise. And as far as what the reactions to it on the ground is, and as far as what the reactions to it by political authorities are, I'm not sure. But what I can say to you is, it seems to me from meetings I've attended that there's an appetite in the Caribbean for cryptocurrency and blockchain technology and so forth to take part in our ICT landscape. So I can almost say that I can see it happening somewhere in the future within the environment of Saint Kitts and Nevis.
Okay, so at least from where you're sitting and just living and working in Saint Kitts and Nevis, at least granted it's still relatively early days, and I do think, as you rightfully say, that at this point it may still just be a pilot that the central bank is executing. That I guess there's no sense of life in Saint Kitts being affected by this new digital currency.
No, not from where I sit, and not from the little bit that the small portion that I've read and I've heard about. There are a few local startups, that are in the e-commerce space, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they're involved as yet in doing cryptocurrency transactions. I'm sure that they are showing interest in that, because we would realize that to expand your portfolio and to grow your portfolios, if you are an e-commerce operator, you would have to think outside the box and think beyond tradition and standard ways of doing business. So I'm sure that somewhere along the line, some of these e-commerce operators are involved and are keen to get involved in seeing cryptocurrency become a regular part of the ICT landscape in Saint Kitts and Nevis.
Okay. All right. So I guess, having kind of spoken about the landscape and the environment, some of the new initiatives that have happened in Saint Kitts, I just want us to step back. And since you are the director of the NTRC, National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission in Saint Kitts and Nevis, I want to just get a sense as to what might be some of the challenges or concerns you might have about telecoms and ICT in Saint Kitts and Nevis from a regulatory perspective.
Well, challenges. If
or concerns. I mean, challenges might be a strong word, so that's why I said concerns as well.
Okay, yes. I favor the description of concerns. Concerns from a regulatory point of view. If I may look at it and compare it to, not compare it, but match it against the developing ICT sector within Saint Kitts and Nevis and across the Caribbean region. One of our concerns as regulators is this thing of data privacy, data protection, and data privacy. Mm-hmm. Because as we become more and more ICT dependent, it therefore means that we'll be giving up more and more of ourselves to an online and a remote and a cloud environment. And data protections that I'm seeing that are being enforced, that are being given and put down as policy, to me is somewhat behind, especially given the fact that, as we would have seen in Europe not too long ago, I think Europe implemented the GDPR. I think that's what it is.
Yes.
I've read it, I've studied it, I've looked at it, and I've compared what they did to where we are in the Caribbean, and if I may slim down some more to where we are in Saint Kitts and Nevis. And I think we still have a lot of work to do. So that's a major concern for us as far as participating in the ICT space is concerned, the concern of data protection and data privacy. Another concern for us is the issue of the over-the-top telecommunication services, in that they are very ubiquitous in nature. They're everywhere and they're accessible. They are not forced upon us. They're there and we go and we access them. My other concern is how much are we giving up to the owners and operators and developers of some of these OTT apps and services that we access and use. My concern is how much are we giving up as citizens of the Caribbean in order to access some of these services. I'm not sure what the data looks like. And when I said giving up, I'm talking about in terms of our personal data and financing. How much are we giving up in that regard? Because I'm sure that we can mimic, we can copy, and we can better some of these services and create and implement our own within our space. And whatever we're giving up, we can give up to our own and to our within our own space, as opposed to what we're doing now. So those are some of our concerns. How involved are we in helping to develop a lot of these OTT services that we see are coming in and continue to grow and continue to consume our time and our monies and whatever else they're getting us to give up. And the other concern, of course, as I said a while ago, is the concern of our data privacy in many, many ways, not just a data privacy from having a Facebook account. I'm talking about if we're going to be doing e-government services, e-health services, we are going to be doing online registration for driver's license and for vehicle registrations and so forth. We are going to be doing things like academic standards and so forth are going to be developed for local colleges, for high schools, for CXC, for GCE. All these things are going to be ICT-centric services. What protection mechanism do we have in place so that I have a sense of confidence, a sense of feeling like I'm a full participator in this environment, and this environment protects me as an individual and protects what I give up as an individual to partake in this environment. So these are some of the concerns we have as regulators.
Okay, those are some interesting points. Certainly the data protection one is one that I've heard before. And I quite like your second point, because I think what ultimately you're saying is that you are concerned that we are just consuming OTTs, but not necessarily looking at ways we can create OTTs, and that might be something for us to have a solid discussion on. Probably even invite you to join us for one of our community chats one of these months.
Not a problem.
All right, and just now thinking from the business perspective, and as much as you're the regulator, but I assume from time to time you may have come across entrepreneurs in Saint Kitts and Nevis, and certainly, just in terms of also your engaging with individuals socially and professionally. And I want to get a sense as to what it is like to be an entrepreneur in Saint Kitts and Nevis. So if you can just share with us your views on the startup environment and startup culture, which also to some degree points back to maybe the extent to which we are leveraging technology and becoming creators as opposed to just, mindless consumers.
Well, as a startup, as an entrepreneur here in Saint Kitts and Nevis, if I may speak from a point of view of understanding what has been happening, the government, when I say the government, I'm speaking for past administrations and now, have invested in, there's a federal bank here, it's called the Saint Kitts and Nevis Development Bank. It's a bank that is owned by the federal government. And that bank was particularly set up and developed for that purpose. It's the Saint Kitts and Nevis Development Bank, and its purpose really is to lend development to the citizenry of Saint Kitts and Nevis as far as education is concerned, as far as investing in agriculture is concerned, as far as investing in any other startup ideas that you may have. And if I may narrow it down to now, this current administration, I think last year four, put aside some $30 million into that bank for easy access by small developers. So entrepreneurs who would have had any business ideas were able to, and I think you can still do that, to approach the bank with your idea. And the bank was structured and is structured in such a way where there is a unit inside, there's a small business development unit within the bank that is totally responsible for taking your idea from your dream, put it on paper, so your business plan and your market forecast and everything the bank will develop all those for you. So you walk into the bank, you said, I have an idea to do a business. I heard you're giving money. The bank is responsible for nursing that idea up to reality. And I think they have, after you would have launched your business, they have up to, I think, it's a 6 months period as an incubator period in which the bank comes back every week to check on you, see how you're moving, and to tweak and to advise. And they also provide specific training for you to understand how to move within the business environment, how to have negotiations and so forth, how to conduct meetings, how to go and do research and development. So the environment here, as far as being an investor, as being a startup is concerned, it's one that is quite readily available and is one that is recognized by the political authorities as being important. And so tremendous investment has been made in that. I think there's also a unit we call SKIPA, which is the Saint Kitts Investment Promotion Agency. SKIPA is SKIPA. Mm-hmm. As a Saint Kitts Investment Promotion Agency. What this agency does is, if you have direct foreign investment where you want to come into the country to invest, and you're not sure about the landscape and then the business environment, you go to SKIPA, and that agency is going to walk you through the business environment in Saint Kitts, make sure that you have crossed all of your T's and dot all of your I's and met the correct thresholds legally and whatever else, so that your investment can meet the requirements and take off, and you can realize your return on your investment when the time comes. So the environment here has been well prepared and well put down for startups and would-be entrepreneurs to get in and be able to, by good management and application, see great returns on the investment when the time comes.
Oh, excellent. And now just looking more generally, and again, these are your personal observations and things that probably you would have either experienced or observed in the field and just living and working in Saint Kitts. But what are some of the tech-related trends or tech trends that you're seeing in businesses in Saint Kitts and Nevis?
The first one that jumps out at me, the first one that I realized, and I think that's a really good question, is I'm now realizing that some of these businesses that are providing their services online are now moving to the mobile platform. So not only you can access them from your desktop point of view, but they have now sort of entertain the mobile solutions to some of their services. So you can access them on your smartphone, your smart tablets, and so forth. Where once ago, you would have had to maybe find a desktop computer to get access to some of these online services here. But I now realize that in keeping with the trend of the ICT sector, not just in Saint Kitts and Nevis, but globally, the mobile solution, and people are now more accessing online services from a mobile point of view as opposed to a fixed a desktop point of view. And so what I'm getting here, the patterns I'm seeing here is people are now being encouraged to now adopt to a more mobile form of providing their online solutions for uptake by their customers and consumers. And this to me is really encouraging. I've looked at it and I'm pleased with what I'm seeing, because we're now hearing about 5G coming around the corner in developed countries, and sometime soon we will start to experience some of those very same smart technologies as far as mobile solutions are concerned. And so we need to have that delivery. We need to have the mobile delivery services here if we are to recognize the LTEs and the 5G services, which in and of themselves are high-speed mobile solutions. So I'm happy to report, if I may put it that way, that one of the development that is going really hard and fast here is that the e-commerce providers and the other online providers for information and services are now taking their services to a mobile solution.
Oh, that's great. But question, with respect to e-commerce, what are the challenges that a lot of Caribbean countries have been having? And I say the countries, but merchants within those countries is matters related to setting up a online payment facility, so being recognized by their local banks as online merchants. Is that a difficulty? Like if you wanted to set up a business and to in Saint Kitts and Nevis and to have your consumers pay by credit card over the internet via your website and so on, how easy is that to do in Saint Kitts and Nevis?
Well, as a matter of fact, about a month ago or 2 months ago or so, I had a meeting, I had a discussion with a developer. There's an IT solution company here that does web development and all scales, e-commerce and otherwise. And I've had a discussion with that company. And what I learned from the company is that it's quite easy within the environment of Saint Kitts and Nevis when compared to some of the other islands. And that is because what I learned, and I did not know that, and as a matter of fact, I'm yet to meet with that company. There is a company here that developed what we call an online payment solution that has been fully certified and recognized by the local banks. And that has helped to cut down on some of the costs that some of these local entrepreneurs were being experiencing when they would have had to use PayPal and the other online payment solutions. Because when you use PayPal and those other solutions, you are paying almost two types of fees. Because PayPal will take their fee, and then for them to transact the money to you, there's another fee.
Exactly.
And so you almost have to price whatever you're selling, whether it's goods or services, very high in order to recover those fees and to still make a profit.
Yes.
And so you pretty much were starting by pricing yourself out of the market.
Yes.
So what I've learned is there is a local company that had developed an online payment solution that has been fully certified and is now fully recognized by local banks. And that solution is now being taken up more and more by some of these e-commerce delivery services that we're seeing happening here in Saint Kitts and Nevis. I'm yet to meet with the company. I made a request to have a discussion with them. I've not met with them as yet because I think I was told that they were off island at the time when I tried to have a meeting with them, and I was told that when they get back, they would have been in contact with our offices here. Mm-hmm. So I'm waiting for them to reach out to us as regulators because I'm trying to understand more and more what sort of certification and recognition they were able to obtain in order for the banks to have given recognition to them to do online payment transactions for people who are willing to expose their credit card information to this company. So I'm yet to meet with them.
Okay, well, that's great, and hopefully I will also get to speak with them as well and understand what they're doing and how they went about it, because it is such a challenge across the region that to the extent that we develop solutions in the region to solve our problems, I think that is such an excellent thing.
Yes.
Okay, so we're beginning to wind down now. So I just have some questions that I want to throw out at you with respect to the strengths and weaknesses, or not necessarily weaknesses, challenges, let me use that word instead. The strengths and challenges of the ICT tech space in Saint Kitts and Nevis. So what are some of the strengths and what might be some of the challenges that you think the country needs to address?
Well, some of the strength, as I highlighted earlier in our discussion, is that there is political will, because as I said, the administration, the government, and by extension, the minister in particular, has given public and has shown public interest in developing the ICT sector on all fronts. And as I said, from the academic levels up to the e-government services and so forth. So that's a strength. The political will is there, and an additional strength is that the citizenry, the people, especially the young people, showing a love, a knack, and a willingness to participate in the ICT environment. So that's a strength, because if you don't have that foundation, if you don't have that buy-in, and if you don't have people who are showing an interest, you could do all you want and it would not amount to anything. So that in and of itself is also a great strength. Another strength we have is that our tourism sector is growing, and is growing very fast, and it's growing from a high-end point of view. And we find that we are deploying and investing more and more ICT solutions into that sector to fully develop that sector even further. And so what we find is, as the sector is growing and ICT is being introduced into the sector, that creates a strength within that sector, which is largely responsible for our economy and our economic activities today. So that itself is a big strength, in that the sector is not growing in a traditional way. It's growing in a modern way, in that we're introducing ICTs into it to further grow it. If I may look on the other side of it, challenges or weaknesses, as you might have said. One of the things is that we are, as you highlighted a while ago, consumers of many things, ICT based. That in and of itself can become and can be considered a challenge and a weakness, in that if tomorrow what we are consuming is no longer available to us, it costs more to consume it, then we'll have to give up more. Or if it's not available, then we are left blindsided and cut off. And we would be wandering around trying to find out, how do we get back on track? How do we build up what we have started? So this is a challenge, in that we have to start to think about, how do we further and fully support our ICT environment that we are building? How do we sustain it? And how do we make it readily, how do we future-proof it so that it be readily available down the road, not just for us now, but for those to come? And so that, to me, is a challenge and a weakness, in that we rely heavily on what happens outside and is sent to us, or we go and we take, as opposed to, can we mirror this, learn from it, create and develop something that is 10 times better than it, and use it within? I think that's a real serious challenge. And I'm not sure if people slow, and when I said people, I'm talking about those who have the powers, as it may be, and those who are in positions of decision making, and those who are in positions of giving directives. I'm not sure if these folks fully appreciate and understand this very serious challenge that one day might confront us, and we will not be prepared to respond to it. So to me, that's the major challenge that I think we have to confront quickly.
Understood. And just my last question, and just, piggybacking on just the fact that, challenges can also breed opportunities. What are some of the ICT tech related opportunities that you see in Saint Kitts and Nevis that you hope people would take advantage of?
Well, one of the great opportunities I think can happen, and not just Saint Kitts and Nevis, but I think the Caribbean as a whole, is we need to see more what I'll call ICT engineers, ICT developers, ICT content managers, and so forth, growing and popping up across the region. This should happen in concert with what I would call, we need to see more data farms and data centers being invested in, created, and implemented here in Saint Kitts and Nevis, and by extension the Caribbean. And I said this because of the fact that, because as it is now, almost all, if not all, of our data is dumped somewhere offshore. Mm-hmm. There is almost nothing that we have a claim to here. However, if we think of that if we think of that word data, which is core and essential to everything ICT related, if we can develop, invest in, and continue to expand on data farm, data centers, and so forth, these core elements of an ICT ecosystem, if we can invest in these, then we will see what we call spin-off or downstream, or what we call retail services being applied to some of these greater investment and development ideas. Because a data center would require software engineers, computer scientists, content developers, and the likes. A lot of these people are readily available but are not being fully utilized in our region. And it's because we do not have that particular platform for them to put their skill set into.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have some of these solutions being implemented here in the region, we would see more and more brain power migrating back into the homelands of the Caribbean islands. And we would see some of the brain power that are currently on the islands, we would see them being fully utilized. And by extension, lending greater innovative ideas to some of the things that should be happening within our space.
And on that note, thank you so much, Ervin. This has just been a really interesting conversation, and it's so wonderful to know what is happening in Saint Kitts and Nevis. The fact that the government seems to be committed to leveraging ICT, focusing on e-government, focusing on education, and hopefully ensuring that its citizenry also develop digitally to take advantage of the opportunities that lie ahead. Thanks again. And I guess, as I said, I'm going to hold you to coming on the community chat for us to discuss how much we are giving up and whether or not the extent to which we are taking advantage of participating more fully in OTTs.
I would be glad to continue to have this discussion, because as you might have realized, that I'm very passionate about being a Caribbean person, and I'm very passionate about all things Caribbean. So I'll be glad to have that discussion as far as OTTs and what we're giving up and what is being taken from us is concerned. So I'm happy that you invited me to this discussion. I was happy to represent the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission of Saint Kitts and Nevis, and by extension to represent Saint Kitts and Nevis in this discussion. If there's any other thing further in the future that we can lend to this ICT podcast that I find is so vital in what we do as a people, I'll be glad to lend to our input.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the ICT Pulse podcast. You can find links to some of the things we talked about on our website, ict-pulse.com. If you like this episode, please show your support by leaving us a review on iTunes, as it will help others find the show. You can email us at info@ict-pulse.com or drop us a note on our Facebook page, facebook.com/ICTPulse, or via Twitter @ICTPulse. We hope you'll join us again for our next episode. Take care.